G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and so far a fantastic week. Now some people mentioned yesterday I looked very tired. It's because I had a yellow fever shot and I sort of crashed a little bit after it. But anyway, if you want to come and join the Telegram, come and do that. Join the conversation, join the rage. But today we have a fair bit to go over. So we're going to look at more precise targeting deep within Ukraine from Russia, which is something we've seen a lot of over the past couple of weeks. We'll talk at length about that. These border incursions into Russia by Ukrainian-backed forces, what this means, what's happened, what developments there are on that. We're going to talk about drones. We're going to talk about shipping lanes, new aid to Ukraine, and also that Putin has done a full like Q&A thing. Of course, all these Q&As with presidents, whatever, regardless really of where it is, a lot of these are completely pre-planned, but there's some interesting bits and pieces then in that we will go over. But the first thing we have to do is we have to talk about something that I think I was ahead of the curve slightly on. Is a few weeks back, I mentioned that it just does seem like Russia is having better ISR capabilities, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, well behind the line. The footage seemed better quality. There was increased targeting of these systems we hadn't even seen touched before, like the HIMARS or the Patriots, as well as then very precise targeting right near where Zelensky leave, then the targeting we've seen with Iskander, with a tornado, then we saw in the same region, then we saw a MiG-29 taken down, and it just seems like something has changed. Is it that there's a new system in the air, which we've spoken about, that some contacts on the ground have said that there may be S-70s in the air, that reports they've got off the front line seem to fit that? That's like a Russian advanced reduced radar cross-section drone. Is there a difference in tactics? Has there been some change capability? Because it does seem like there is. Well, I think a lot of other pages now are starting to sort of catch up to the 8-ball. And this all comes after we've been told that this capability should be greatly reduced because the A-50s aren't flying and 2 A-50s were taken down. That we're told that should be reduced, but it seems to have increased. So we're going to run over a few little things here. And of course, the new footage that's come out of 2 Mi-8 helicopters from Ukraine being hit with precise munitions. But we have both Ukraine and Russian pages here questioning what has happened. The Russians published a video of the destruction of our helicopters. Judging by the UAV, we're already waiting for them in this place. So hinting that there maybe something was known, maybe there was a leak. Then this bloke here, Ukrainian side, clearly Russians are capable of hitting quite deep in the rears. Definitely a worrying trend. Hopefully the soldiers are okay. We do know that there were obituaries posted for some of the pilots here that we'll speak over. Aussie Defender then says this, released by the MOD, really shows massive increase in Russian ISR capabilities since the war begun, and I agree. And then even a Russian page has said then this: I don't know what the Ministry of Defense did the past few weeks. A lot of high-value targets were discovered and liquidated. It's also notable the drone's picture quality and precise strikes speed and accuracy increased quite a lot. So in strikes like this, you've got something called kill chain. So from finding the target, confirming the target, and then strike on target, and that chain between when your intel to finding it, to seeing it, to then taken out, that seemed to be incredibly shocking for Russia for the first couple of years of war, and that seems to have increased. So there may be a tactics difference, but we are seeing better quality of this drone stuff come out. It's also a contributing factor that Ukrainian forces seriously suffer from lack of ammunition and supplies, forcing them to bring valuable assets closer to the front, which is very true as well. So there is a couple of different reasons this could be happening. But surprisingly, some very, very pro-Ukrainian pages have speculated about maybe that there are some leaks. This bloke who just makes things up. But I'll say this is probably the same. But it's interesting to go over that General Shulzny was replaced in part because of his excessive operational secrecy, keeping many out of the loop. Since his firing in less than a week, Ukraine has lost HIMARS systems, Patriot launchers, parked helicopters. And then this page here says, and an ASAMS launcher. Things have gotten a lot worse since his firing. The replacement led to other commanders being replaced, increasing the chances of there being rats to leak information to the Russians. It's not just this intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. It would take years to find these 40 Ks from the front. Saying that actually just scouting for where these are is going to take a hell of a long way. Like the further away you get, the more broad of a search area you're looking for. It does seem, like they said before, that something was waiting in this area. Yep, here it is. Bang. So maybe there are more leaks as well, since we do know that upper echelon of military commanders has really been a full reshuffle there. Now we're going to look over the footage. We're going to talk about this just a little bit. Now, here we see then these 3 Mi-8 choppers here. Please take note as well of this truck. So then we see the first come in is a cluster munition. People have asked what this is. Clusters. So airburst cluster. This will basically disable anything like this. Airframes, very sensitive. Yes, Mi-8, less sensitive than your typical Bell choppers, but still something like this is going to just litter it with ball bearings. And then, yeah, it's going to be immobile. And then we move on further, and then we see that one chopper has been removed, one has flown away, as well as the truck. And then we see 2 very precision strikes on these choppers. And then they're burning up. We'll see second precision strike. And these are very precise for how far away these are. And we're going to talk about exactly where these helicopters are as well. So 2 choppers then taken out. Now, there are reports. Again, no visual confirmation. Again, anything in this war, anything and everything is filmed, not only because everyone has a smartphone and there's a billion drones in the air, but also it's filmed for propaganda reasons. There are reports coming out that this chopper that was able to take off was followed by a surveillance drone and then a FAB hit where it then went into a hangar. That said, no footage of that yet. If it doesn't come out in the next 24 48 hours, then probably didn't happen. But yep, we see this to disable and then strike targeting here as well. Take notice, this is very good quality footage as well. Now, this is where this has been geolocated to, down then the road here, which does line up. And as you can see, it's a long way from where the front line is sitting. I'll show you exactly where this is compared to then the front line. So this road runs, it's just down about here. Look at this sort of range. It's not really going to matter if we're a little bit out. So let's say here to then front line, we're talking a minimum of over 50 kilometers for anything. But of course, these targets are going to be a long way back. So you're talking 50 Ks in, you have multiple drones in the air, precise targeting. Has something changed? Absolutely. Something has changed. Whether it is a lack of munitions and the air defense for Ukraine, whether it's an increase in tactics or capability for Russia. We've been saying it for a few weeks, and I think it's coming to fruition that something has changed. Now, I have a second little piece of footage that I want to show you from this. So I said in the beginning, watch for that then transport truck. Now, this truck was then followed by this drone. And as you can see, these drones have a lot of freedom of movement in the air. So and then this truck is moving in this sort of agricultural area. You can see like a harvester and some trailers, and then moves into then this shed. And then this shed is hit with a precise strike on it as well. Now, how do we know this is the same truck? Well, we're putting a 2 and 2 together, but we see this is where then this was hit. The choppers were hit on this road. And then we move up, and this is right where then that shed is. So this is the road. This is the shed. We're talking, how do I do measure distance? 800 meters as the crow flies. So yeah, we're getting a pretty good idea that that is the same truck. Again, a lot of freedom of movement in the sky from those. And it's just something that is going to become a big issue. It's already a big issue. If you're losing HIMARS, Patriots, choppers, these are a big problem. And not only just the loss of the equipment is less of a problem than the increased capability, because if Russia does have freedom of movement in these areas more so, well, how does that then go for further air defense and air superiority for the Russians? I've said before, if the Russians were able, I think the biggest failure in the entire Russian invasion of Ukraine, if you were to point out which element failed in the Russian armed forces the most, Air Force. 100%, in my eyes, 100% the Air Force. The Navy firing in missiles, landed some guys. The Army went in. Yeah, they effed up some stuff. But the Air Force was where they had the biggest overmatch of power compared to Ukraine at the time and failed to get any well, they had dominance, but as far as air superiority, failed on that. But if they were able to somehow gain air superiority, to take that back will be incredibly difficult. Once it's gone, it's harder than just maintaining it. But I want to show you here. So this is where we are looking near this Novopavlivka here. Now we see a few areas which over the past couple of days will ring some bells. So we see Shevchenko, Pokrovsk in here, and these are not far away. Now what's interesting about these is these are some of the areas where we did see some other elements taken out. So elements like HIMARS, Patriot, and that MiG-29 was all within, I'm talking this region here. So it does seem within this Pokrovsk area just out of Avdiivka that this is where the Russians are having the most freedom of movement in the sky so far. So we went over some intel that I got sent that there were S-70s operating. Some people said maybe not. They'll be more saving that for like something with NATO. I don't want to lose it. But then I've had this as well. So, by the way, you're of course right that weapons stored internally can have good range. So this was when someone told me that it would need to be very close to the target to target it with this. But of course, missiles can have further range. I'm just not sure what Russian ones would actually fit into the S-70 bays as far as missiles. But perhaps they would. And if they don't, I assume Russia will develop new ones that will. So this can not only carry munitions, but also has a suite of systems on board to spot as well, to work in tandem with Su-57s, which is what we've said is there seems to be an increase in ISR and an increase in air control, yet the AWACS would control the airspace, apparently not a flying. Could that be bridged before the upgrades to those and then the A100s as well, the A50U's A100s? Could this be bridged by another system, which is a Gen 4 plus Gen 5 aircraft? They have a suite on board to be able to be a force multiplier like this. Anyway, with a good anti-radiation missile and a suitable radar, good avionics. This drone could be a really nice seed to suppression of air defense platform. In fact, now that I think about it a bit more, perhaps Russian command would want to try it out a bit in Ukraine, not so much for the expected effects of this war, but to test it and gain experience in such missions in case they ever need this against NATO. It would be risky, but the knowledge and experience gained just might be deemed worthwhile. And that was the risk of losing this to reward the battlefield. Is it worth it? But Ukraine is a massive testing ground for different bits of technology, especially from the West going in, seeing how this actually works against the Russian forces, which a lot of the equipment developed like NLAWs, Javelins have worked brilliantly against these of what they were developed for, but never went up against it. But don't think that that's not going back the other way either. So is there something new in the air? Well, it's definitely not confirmed, but what we do know, cause and effect, well, there is 50, 60 kilometers behind the line, a huge increase in precise targeting and ISR. Something has changed. Is it leaks from the Ukrainian upper echelon of command since there's been a huge reshuffle? Likely. Is there a new system in the air? Likely. Have tactics improved? We know tactics have improved in other places. Why would we think they would not here? So we have many options up in the air of why this could be, but just pointing that out. So let me know, I guess, what you think. Anyway, we need to talk about these border incursions. Now, Deep State map, they still show that there are these four in between Sumy, then Kursk, and in between Belgorod and Kharkiv. So they haven't changed at all, the size of these, and they're still seen as grey zone, but Deep State is still saying that they are in there, although other reports will say that no, then these have been pulled back out. Currently, we are unsure. There's not that much footage actually coming out, but we do have little bits and pieces that are coming out. So the Freedom of Russian Legion then released this video here saying that they are the liberated part of Tedkino in the Kursk Oblast. So we're talking in here. Now, this has sort of been, well, not sort of been, this has been completely then called out by a bit of everyone who have then geolocated this to here. So you can see these buildings with the soldiers and, of course, the curve in the road where the tin lines up. So it's been geolocated to then here. So this building here, which is in this Rizhivka, which is just on the Ukrainian side here of the border. So we do know that this is an informational stunt Is a force of this side ever going to actually be able to, as they say, quote, march to Moscow? No, you've crossed over at most a few hundred guys, probably less, without correct logistics support, without artillery support to a huge amount, that it's going to be limited in here. But the benefit is to try, well, the attempted benefit is to try and swing people back onto your side within Russia, and an informational win for Ukraine, which of course an informational win for Ukraine right now is very, very important. They're not having much wins in any other spaces, at least on frontline areas. So this does have that. And don't take away how important informational wins and battles like that are too. But we have a little bit of footage to go over, and as well what Putin says. So we have this video has come out of that tank that hit a mine. So we see the tank here. We're going to watch a second piece here. And these are filming from the behind Russian guys viewing this via drone. And then it hits that mine there and they are cheering. Now, in this bit of footage, which we'll have a bit of a zoom in, this is where the tank sits, and these are all mines on the ground here, we presume. So again, they sort of stormed straight in and taken those out, and it's a fair bit of a loss there for not having that much effect on target. Now, we will have a bit of a look at where a lot of then this is. This is primarily sitting at this border here, this Nekhovka. So this is between Kharkiv, Belgorod here. So let's have a bit of a look on deep state map. See Kharkiv, zoom in up here, and it is then this border here. So you can see even by the deep state claim, didn't get too far, but we have a little bit more footage here as well. And there's not too much geolocated footage actually showing that much movement. So then we can see then these Legion soldiers moving in through here, jumping across the border. And then we can see then the tanks moving in here, tanks firing at border checkpoints, at border areas here, as well as into these buildings, drones, and storming this area. Now, we did talk yesterday that there was a huge build-up. So you can see the barrier here. Of course, this barrier is funneling into these mines. This is how landmines work. Landmines are area denial. You funnel into defensive works into areas like this, and then hits the mine on the ground. You can see the one they hit right here, where my cursor is, blows track. It moves on forward. You'll see the very typical blown track here. So it's blown. You can sort of see the top down was better. You could see where the mine actually is. And then you've run off the track. And then the 3 crew of this T-series tank managed to then escape rearwards. And then the Russian drone watching them drop then a grenade, then destroying that tank right on then the border. You can see better where then the landmine was hit. And then the tank, typically T-series fashion, then cooks off. So how successful has this been? Informational wise, very. As far as held territory, I'm not seeing anything that I've found like conclusive really actually to that. But again, it is very embarrassing, and it may force Russia to deploy more soldiers, more assets into these areas. Now let's look what Syriac says about this. Today, Russian militias supported by Ukrainian army have launched new attacks on the border. At the moment, there is nothing confirmed about the success of the militias. However, it is necessary to re-emphasize the propagandistic use that is circulating in the networks as a video of the Free Russian Army troops in Thankyou, when in fact the neighboring here crossed the border. So that's a little bit that we looked at. Several accounts of social networks have interpreted as a ground breakthrough. So people saying it's a ground breakthrough. These guys who work off donations, things like this is very important. You know, if you're fundraising money to do a military op, it's like if you're fundraising money on your OnlyFans. You have to release propaganda and information and videos and photos and whatever to then do that. Yes, they've had some success, I guess, but how far can this go without logistics capability, without resupply? It's going to be limited at best, and could be an absolute death trap too if you manage to get cut off trying to get back out across that border. So I don't know, wait out on hearing on the success of that, although a lot of people are cheering. Now, this is what Putin has said in an interview yesterday. If you go on the Kremlin, you can find the full transcript of this. This is a propagandistic interview. You can tell through the way the questions are laid out. But again, it's interesting to look at. I can't but ask, these attacks in Belgrade and Kursk regions are military action going on in our regions. They act bolder. Do they feel something? what's then causing this. So he says it's happening against the setback on the front line, line of contact at the front line. They achieved none of the goals they had set last year, and they've regained the initiative as far as the Russian forces, that they're trying to demonstrate at least something given the setbacks. Now, the other bit here, he goes on about the claimed losses, whatever. We haven't seen any of that yet. The second thing is the informational effect, which I think is actually the first thing. But I guess that ties into then the first bit. But then he goes, the third thing, it is their wish to obtain anything, a chance, an argument, or leverage in a potential future negotiation process. We will return you this, you will return us that. Now, this is something that a hell of a lot of people have spoken about, particularly when we're talking about counter-offensives, is what is more likely, Ukraine pushing down into Crimea and taking back Crimea, or Ukraine launching an offensive and, say, gain the Belgorod, Kursk Oblast, something like this, and say, we'll give you these regions back if you give us then back Crimea. Now, I'm not saying that I am a believer in that at all. I'm just saying this is what a hell of a lot of people have spoken about, this swap, and obviously Putin believes something then against those lines as well. Of course, now we'll have a quick look over the map. So, of course, this is Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv. The red area is occupied since 22, and the purple since 2014. Of course, Belgorod, Kursk is we see the incursions happening recently. Now, a lot of people ask me, why do I use the Syriac maps when, you know, you've got deep state, blah, blah, blah? Well, I will say Syriac is incredibly reliable. It's not as biased as something like deep state, and typically is 24 to 48 hours in front, even out to 72, in front of the updates that deep state has. Now, let's just have a quick look here. Now, this is in the tourney direction. We have seen a Russian change here, an advance in one area and a withdrawal in some. So there may be some change here. The reason I say withdrawal is we haven't seen any blue or green pop up, meaning Ukraine has got new territory here. But what I'd say is they've just changed the axis to push up then this tree line towards Tourney. We know that Russian forces are pushing very hard in this area to try and get up to this natural barrier that would be between Ivanivka and Yampolivka in this region where they're pushing out as well. Now, we just need to move down to the south a little bit. No update through Bakhmut, no update in Avdiivka itself. But then we do see Pervomayski here. This is where Syriac was at least 24 or 48 hours in front. We do see this close-up of this territory here, a further advancement into Pervomayski. We haven't seen the crossover here, of which we have then seen by Syriac's reporting at least, but that is where we're looking at the moment, and it is lining up. Of course, their goal here is to both get Pervomayski and Nevelsky here. Syriac will say that Nevelsky has come under control of the Russian forces. Now, we need to come down into Novomyalivka here. We know that for about a week, this has looked very different between what Syriac has been saying and what then Deep State is saying. I'm not sure why the map is so poor quality, but it has looked like this. So, of course, we have the factory here. We have another milk factory down here, better quality now. But what Syriac has been showing is it's saying that this has been under control. We saw right about here, if I can draw, we did see a drone dropped on, a drone munition dropped on a Russian soldier. So, you know, the Russians are somewhere up into there. That was maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and that this was likely closed, and that Syriac showed at least to this tree line, if not this one here. Now, let's step up to then today, and it's looking fairly close to where it is. So it's, of course, where I've put this red dot, getting up into this position where we then did see the munition dropped, but fair enough to say it is grey zone, but we have seen then these paddocks close up, indicating a new axis that they can advance on Novomyalivka here too. But the rest of the maps, there's been no change in here. If you're wondering why there's no video of me, I forgot to do this and I'm doing it after. Now, let's look at these shipping lanes, and we'll look at some drone strikes within Russia as well. So I'll send over some stuff saying that basically that Russia have sort of a broader plan to increase their shipping lanes and their reliance against the West through the Houthis, through Iran as well. And now, one thing we do know that Iran, North Korea, Russia, there's a lot of support going into certain, I can't really say it because you're not allowed to say it, but into terrorist organizations around the world. Now, we are of course seeing that the Houthi rebels from Yemen are having a huge effect on traffic through the sea, through the Gulf of Aden, into the Red Sea, and of course out through the Suez Canal. Now, of course, this supplies a lot of Asia into then Europe. Now, one thing we need to look at, and he pointed out to me, is, well, Russia want to, and have been for a number of years, over a number of decades now, been building up the north-south transport corridor. Now, this is difficult to see, so I'll try and lay this out on the map for you, but this is the Black Sea, this is the Caspian Sea. Now, the traditional route is in this blue. The standard route comes up through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean to get to then St. Petersburg for Russia, but into Europe here in general, where this, the NSTC route, goes by both boat, rail, boat again, and can move up into Russia and or into St. Petersburg as well. Now, he was pointing out to me that this is already happening to a degree and that there are ships breaking these restrictions already. Now, why is this important? Well, we know that the insurance on the boats moving through the Red Sea has skyrocketed because they're getting hit and or sunk with bloody Iranian missiles that a lot of the technology is coming probably, well, most likely we know, from Russia into Iran, then given to the Houthis in Yemen. So some of the boats can't move. Well, the insurance premium to move through has gone up, or they have to move down around the bottom of South Africa. So we see then this, I've used this one before, that instead of 25 days, it'll take then 34 days. Of course, that increases the price on everything. Of course, what Russia is saying, well, we can move your stuff up through here, and this port terminal that we see just down here across from the UAE in Iran, this is the offloading bay to put onto trains to then move up into then the Caspian here to further move on into Russia. Now, I promise this is going bloody somewhere. Now, we find this article from 2017, but it does talk about things in 2002. That the GCC and East Africa. Let's talk about the GCC. This is the Gulf Cooperation Council. So you have Saudi, the UAE, Oman, Kuwait. We have a look on, wrong map. We see Saudi, Oman, UAE, Kuwait. So this is the GCC here that we speak about. That remains today is supporting the sector. An agreement signed in 2002 between India, Iran and Russia, which established a shorter route under the name North-South Transport Corridor, the one we showed, gained momentum after Iranian sanctions were lifted and expected, blah, blah, blah. The NSTC route comprises a sea corridor for India and Iran, land corridor through here, and logically the shortest route. So it does say that it doesn't go through areas like Afghanistan, whatever, because of then the unsettlement there that has been happening, and of course the allied countries here. Now, need to look a little bit further on. I hope you're tracking along, or if you've clicked off this. Of course, hijacking threat, Gulf of Aden, high security risk, high insurance premiums on the vessels. Now, this is years and years ago, but this is where we're talking about, the Gulf of Aden. This is where all the pirates were at the time. Now where the Houthis are in Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, we're having to deploy multiple Navy ships in there because of this. It's got worse. That Russia's been pushing for the NSTC in diplomatic channels since sanctions were imposed in 2014 following its annexation of Crimea. Now, what it's trying to do is trying to take the reliance on Western stuff moving through here and take that away so they can move stuff into Russia through here, undercutting a lot of this. Now, we do have ships that my friend sent me that does look like this is happening. So just today, if we in the AIS tracker, we see this British ship that he said these are avoiding sanctions, are coming into St. Petersburg to use bits and pieces of this route. Now, I'm unsure exactly on if this is being used or not, but he's saying that bits and pieces are definitely being used. We see as well Denmark here moving into St. Petersburg. We have a German ship as well here moving into St. Petersburg as well. So it's very interesting to, I guess, have a look over and see exactly what is actually happening. But that's what he's saying, is there's an increase in this. This guy's very in the know as well. Now, one thing I want to talk about is we have a look at where they're trying to lift this to get through this new area, to get through Iran, through into Russia. Well, let's have a look at BRICS and BRICS' recent expansions. BRICS is not a defensive alliance like NATO, it's an economic alliance. But let's have a look at who's come up. So countries within the GCC being, of course, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and then You have then Iran as well. And as you can see that there is an increase in BRICS in this area that, of course, may be really wanting to move stuff up and through here, causing, of course, less reliance on the dollar, the euro, the pound, and shipping lanes through the Red Sea. Now, this is a bit of conspiracy, but is there extra support given to Yemen at the moment, specifically to sort of decrease reliance on this, increase reliance on other areas, or just make it more expensive down the bottom of Africa? Again, I'll try and get more information on this, but just putting bits and pieces together. Now, Ukraine as well got another 5.5 billion euros today in defence assistance for 2024 under the European Peace Facility, announcing the EU remains determined to provide lasting support to Ukraine and ensure that the country gets military equipment it needs to defend itself from the Belgian president. Ukraine has had a number of successful strikes against oil facilities in Russia as well today. Let's have a look at this. This is a Ryazan oil refinery. So we see that this is about 500 kilometers away from the closest point in Ukraine, up near Moscow. And we do have some impressive footage here of one of these Ukrainian drones coming in. So you'll see it here. You shake your hands, mate. And then it's on its final leg. Skip forward. Skip forward. Final leg here, and then you'll see a successful strike against this, where there's been at least 2 or 3 other strikes already. Some of these were shot down or taken down with EW as well. There's said to be over 40 fired in. We also have Taiwan has seen the success of the Ukrainian seaborne drones, and we're not sure where they're ordering them from, whether home built from Europe, from America, we're not sure, but ordering over 200 of these to destroy or slow down Chinese warships approaching their island nation. Of course, we know that warships have no real good way yet of defending themselves against these, and that would be something that you'd want to use in a situation if it was to come up like this. Now, we have Putin has talked about negotiations as well. Now, this is in that same interview, but saying, are we going to negotiate? We sure are. But we're definitely not ready for talks that are based on some kind of wishful thinking, which comes after the use of psychotropic drugs. But we are ready for talks based on the realities that have developed as they, in such cases on the ground. This is the first thing. So saying that they're open to negotiations, but it has to be realistic. It can't be wishful thinking. It can't just be, we want this, and with nothing back talking about yet. Anyway, for us to hold negotiations now, just because they're running out of ammunition, would be ridiculous. So we're not going to do it if Ukraine seems to be on the back foot. Nevertheless, we're open to a serious discussion, and we're eager to resolve all conflicts, especially this one, by peaceful means. However, we must be sure that this is not just another pause that the enemy wants for use for rearmament, but rather a serious conversation with security guarantees for the Russian Federation. And this is something Putin's spoken about in length, was those first negotiations that happened in the days following the initial invasion that had Russia pull back from areas, just a pause to then get in a better position to then scrap that. That is what he will say again and again. And if there was a pause negotiation and a rearmament, that he's saying it can't just be for that they want guarantees around that too. So that's what he at least is saying. You remember in the run-up to the election about possible negotiations on the front. But Legends, I think we have covered just about everything. Yep, we have. And it's a much cooler day here in Adelaide, so that is nice. But look after yourselves, Legends, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.